Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Penney Peirce is a respected clairvoyant empath, visionary, author, and popular lecturer and trainer. She is one of the early pioneers in the intuition development movement, specializing in inner energy dynamics, expanded perception, transformation, intuition development, and dream work. She's worked throughout the U.S., Europe, Japan, South America, and South Africa since 1977, coaching business and government leaders, psychologists, scientists, celebrities, and those on a spiritual path about the hidden dynamics of what makes for true success. Penney is the author of 10 books, including Leap of Perception, Frequency, and her newly released book, Transparency. Now let's welcome Penney to the show. Hi, I'm Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show, where we co-create powerful, conscious conversations on the leading edge. Today, I'm really excited to bring back one of our favorite guests, Penney Peirce. She's joining us to talk about her new book, Transparency, and I am so excited for this conversation to see how it unfolds because, oh my goodness, Penney, your book is absolutely incredible. As are all of them. But this one I had the pleasure of taking with me on my trip to Europe recently. And so I was exploring these ideas. And so I can see how there are some parallels in how I was navigating through my experience of my trip with what you're talking about in the book. So it's perfect timing, not just for myself, but what is going on in the world. So let's dive in.
Yes.
Yeah. So first off, welcome back.
Thank you. It's always fun. It's really always fun talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, this word transparency is kind of a loaded word. It brings up so much. And I actually love this word, transparency, because when I think of transparency, I think of vulnerability. And honestly, that scares me. So when you were writing this book, when transparency came to mind, I know you often kind of channel the name of the book when you're writing. What was your process? What was coming forward for you in writing this book?
Well, part of it was that I realized suddenly that I had been using the word transparency in in the three previous books in a kind of a small way.
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
and I think the last chapter in, I don't know, Frequency or Leap of Perception was accelerating towards transparency. And I forgot that. And then when I was going to write this new book, what shall it be about? And that would boom, that word came in. That was it. And I thought, well, this won't be a very big book. There's not much to say about this. And then it turned out to be bigger than the previous books. It really is kind of a timely thing, because after I wrote it and it came out, it seems like I hear it every day in the news. It's like, oh, we're trying to be transparent, or this isn't transparent enough, or something. I mean, it's just like boom, boom, boom out there. So, but I realized that there were sort of two kinds of transparency. One was what we usually think of in the news, right? It's about access to information and truthful information, and it's all about information in the information age, right? Which we're sort of getting to the end of that now, I think, and about ready to spring on into the intuition age.
Yay!
Where there's a whole different kind of nonlinear perception that's, that we're learning to do it now. We're not used to it at all, and it involves intuition, of course. But in that new kind of consciousness, there's more vertical transparency. which means really becoming personally transparent ourselves and not having information necessarily. And I think that happens, when we realize we are the soul. In other words, the spiritual realm and the physical realm integrate. And you see that, inside matter is energy and consciousness and light. Inside us is a soul. And I am the soul. I don't have a soul. It's not like a balloon on a string out there somewhere that I'm, going to try to get. Uh, but as you realize you are the soul, then what happens? Well, you say, well, I must know what I'm doing. So somewhere in me, I have a bit and I know how to make the choices I need to make in order to learn the things I need to learn to evolve. And so you start to trust yourself, because, hey, I know what I'm doing. And then that kind of grows. It's kind of like, it's a contagious thing, transparency. When you start to be clear, then you see clarity around you and you see through other people's, surface layers, and you see who they really are. And then you don't buy into all the lies and the dishonesty and phonies. It's such an interesting phenomenon, actually. Yeah.
It is. And you talk about radical trust in your book. And yes, I think once you feel this energy that we have, the intuition, right? We have this knowing. And once we connect with that, oh my goodness, we are required to have some serious trust.
Right. Well, of course, it takes trust to, first of all, access the intuition, or even to enter the right brain, even to enter a consciousness that is not proven and factual and locked down and, finite, but to move into this place of no language and direct experiential knowing, where you can't prove things. And then when you're in that, and that's also, I think, the imaginal realm, that place of the right brain or the unified field, or where all knowledge is there to be had if you'd like it, but you have no real sense of self or definition there because you become everything. And that means you can access everything, and somehow I think the soul places the attention on certain parts of that unified field, which brings them forth so that we can know them in our left brain and make a reality out of them. Otherwise, we would just be spirits floating around,
Right.
So it takes trust to let go of the left brain, move into the right brain, go into that state of immersion or engagement in such a visceral way that you lose that sense of identity momentarily, and so that's a big one right there. And then to trust the information that comes, that's another one. And then to trust the fact that the flow, there is a thing called the flow, I think, that is kind of the maybe collective consciousness of all beings, even trees and flowers and birds and everything, that are evolving together. And they don't evolve separately. Everybody evolves as part of this whole. So when I do something, it helps other people get the information they need to do something that you need, that you're doing something that I need, and everything's kind of fitting together in this perfect way, right? And so that trust in that flow is really critical too. This that the events in my life show up, and I notice them in a sequence that is just right for me and my evolutionary path, and even if it's difficult, or a challenging kind of situation or a sad situation or something, there's data in that for me. There's something there for me to learn about myself and life and how big things are, and what's the level beyond what I have right now. So I've started to look at all events and all situations as data, right? Not good or bad,
right,
but useful.
Well, you talked about the more transparent you become, the more you can decipher like what is truth, really, and you can see beyond what either people show you or what the 3D reality shows you, because it is we see it in this 3D reality, that doesn't mean it's true, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think in each second or moment, what we see is real in that moment. But
Mm,
also I've had experiences where I've been looking at a physical world and then I shift like one hair to the right or left and it turns into a realm of light. Like I
mm-hmm.
see the particles inside of the matter floating there, like, you know, and it's all just like a pixelated, light drawing. And then it shifts back a hair and here we are again, and it's like the shift between the physical and non-physical is so tiny right now. It's
Mm,
so
yeah.
easy to flow into the inner world because it's not so far away anymore, and um, I think when you can do that, you realize, that the spiritual world basically has always been inside the physical world. We just haven't had the frequency or the mind in order to see it. We
Mm-hmm.
haven't been at the level where we could understand that that was true. Now we are getting there.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, right.
Finally. Oh my gosh. This has been a
Slowly,
really,
slowly.
yeah, slow, long journey. But I do
Yeah,
have faith that once it's like that tipping point, that more people are going to become more transparent or become more conscious, and um, the frequency, it'll continue to elevate, and so I think that that's going to speed
it
up the
will.
process. Yeah.
It will. Yeah, and I think part of this, becoming transparent is, um, my inner voice told me just let yourself be exposed. I was like, oh,
Mm.
like,
Yes, like take your clothes off and run around
right.
naked. It's like, ah.
It was like you don't have to broadcast yourself to everybody,
Yeah.
but don't hide and don't put up boundaries, and you don't have to defend yourself. Just be, you know, and be what you are in each moment. Because I
Yeah.
realized while writing the book too that the idea of humility was very important. But humility is not being less than somebody else or something. It's more about being honest about what you are in each moment. If you're
Mm,
angry,
yeah.
okay, I'm angry right now or frustrated right now. And if I'm happy, I'm happy right now, and
Mm-hmm.
go ahead, let it just be there. And anybody who wants to see you or can see you, they will. And if it's not part of their pattern, they won't notice you. So you don't have to try to
Mm-hmm.
make people notice you or not notice you. you know, the energy itself does all that. So it takes a lot of
Yes.
effort out of being in the world or even doing things like marketing yourself.
Yes. So true. And you know, I've come across so many people, myself included, that there is this fear of truly being seen, and I have found that it's it's this fear of being vulnerable, and that people are going to see us or judge us in a way that that's negative or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I found that by becoming more transparent and like you say, kind of just allowing myself to just simply be in the moment, just be myself, um, that it's not so scary, that it's kind
Right.
of like you're just like slipping into a hot bath.
Yeah.
it's it's
I think
easy.
too, if you're want to become all of yourself or more of yourself, it's not all goody goody.
Right.
We experiment. We try out things that are scary. We try out things that are challenging or we fail to see what that feels like
Mm-hmm.
and then we learn hopefully from that and saying, well, I don't really want to keep doing that because it doesn't make me feel that good, but I understand it now. So I think if you're an interesting person, I sometimes call it being irreverently reverent, or reverently irreverent or something, where
Yeah.
you you let yourself laugh at things. You let yourself have, I call it having spinach in your teeth. You let
Mm-hmm.
yourself have those foibles because everybody has them. That's a universal thing that we can relate to each other on. And so why wouldn't I let people see that I've had, strange experiences in my life of various kinds? because
Yes.
it's all helped make me what I am right now. And then I'm sure I'll do some more weird things and it'll help make me into the
Mm-hmm.
next me.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
I love that story that you talked about. There was a client that came in, and she was really like perfectly dressed, and and you
yes,
had like coffee on your shirt. And
yes, yes.
do you want to
Oh,
share
yeah.
that?
Oh, she was a very wealthy and high level executive who was dressed in a very pristine business suit and, proper and all that. And so I sat down to work with her. I was already a little intimidated by her presence. And then I looked down and I saw that I had dribbled coffee on my front of my shirt. And I thought, oh, great. And then that made me more self-conscious.
Yeah.
And then I looked over at her and I noticed that her perfect shirt had come apart and was unbuttoned and you could see her bra underneath it. And I
Yeah.
I, I thought, I'm not going to say anything. Um, she has her thing, I have my thing. We're equal. And then at that point I was actually able to talk because before when I was so intimidated, nothing was coming for the
Mm-hmm.
session. I was like, oh, and as soon as I could see her vulnerability and her kind of equality with me, I was fine again. And then it flowed and we ended up having a wonderful time. And she turned
Mm-hmm.
out to be not like she looked at all. She was like really warm hearted, but sometimes, yeah, you just have to find that matching vulnerability,
Yes. And I
you
think that's
know?
so important and so powerful that, just that example of how we interpret things and how we um, kind of project our thoughts and feelings onto other people.
Hmm.
And I know you talk about that in one part of the book, how the more transparent you become, there are people that will do that. They'll project things onto you.
That's
Um,
right.
and boy, I
That's
have
true.
noticed that. I have felt that. And ooh, that feels icky.
Well, it's just odd. It's just that you can't
Yeah.
hold it. Let me explain a
Yeah.
little bit more about that because as you get rid of your clutter and your fears and your sticky stuff, you know, that you're holding to yourself and you're not holding anything anymore. People who had used to have that same stuff as you will look at you and they'll try to project onto you that same stuff so that you'll match them again. Like if you
Mm.
would fall backwards and go back into the same thought structure with them, then they could have agreement and they would feel safe. But if
Yeah.
you don't have it, then they suddenly feel their own stuff, right? And then they get very uncomfortable because they don't want to have to feel their own stuff. And so then they project things onto you,
Mm-hmm.
like you're stuck up, or you think you
Mm-hmm.
know it all, or whatever it is. You're a goody goody or whatever. And because they don't understand how to just be with somebody who's open. So all you can do is keep dropping it. They project it onto you. Don't take it. Don't accept it.
Yeah. If it
you
were
know
that easy. I
well, you
mean,
have to learn that and then you
yeah.
have to give back to them, maybe talk right into the issue that they have by giving them a compliment that
Mm.
counteracts that thing that oh, I don't have to be in the negative side of this thing. There are ways that we can help lift people out of that negativity then, because the more transparent you become, the more compassionate you become.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see really truly how just a kind word would help somebody. You don't react the same. You don't react actually
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
all because that's fear.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you talk about being in the bridge, and I think that, there are some areas where I'm still on that bridge thing because,
Oh, aren't we all? We're in a real bridge time, where
mm-hmm.
some of us are getting fairly clear and we know what means, all this stuff. And some people are really starting to wake up, but they haven't done a lot of the work yet, but they're doing it and they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Other people are just getting the idea that they could wake up, but it's still really scary. And other people haven't even gotten the idea and they're just upset because the energy's going so fast and they feel out of control and they're trying
Right.
to dig back into their security systems, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
they're getting negative, really negative. And so there's people in all levels of this transformation process right now. And I think it's challenging to stay in your own level of clarity and keep on your own track, keep on doing your own work, and don't get sidetracked or backslide into, old patterns. And I enumerate many of them in the book of ways that we do backslide, although I can't think of them off my head right now. But, that, but that projection into you of people's own issues is one of them, because you're an empty space. You're like, it's like a blank screen. People can project whatever they want onto you. If you don't buy it,
Yeah, so if you have an emotional reaction by what they say, even though, like, that it's not true, but then you still have an emotional reaction and it upsets you because maybe it's like an old story for you. Is that like that bridge space?
That's a backsliding.
Okay.
Yeah, and first of all, you have to remember in frequency, I wrote about your home frequency, which really is the vibration of your soul in your body. When you've identified with the soul and you're feeling the way you love to feel and you're in your clarity and joy, you like yourself. And things work suddenly. They're like, synchro mesh, everything's working. When you go back into fear, you get a contraction, and then things snag. And then they don't work, and you can't get your good information, and you get all confused and upset. You feel stuck.
Yeah.
So part of like backsliding, like you were saying, is if you have an emotional reaction to something, it means you've gone back into an old pattern of yours that was based on fear. And you can feel it in your body. If you're used to choosing your home frequency and staying in that aligned state of being centered and enjoying yourself, and then you get into that, you go, oh, that's not the way I like to feel. A or B, which one do I prefer? And I don't care for this one. So I think I'll drop it right now, take my attention out of it, and put my attention back into the way I like to feel. Now, it doesn't mean you're negating or avoiding that other thing. It's just that you're not making it become real by placing attention onto it. So what happens then is that when you choose to feel the way you like to feel, that thing, it's almost like it comes up from the inside and you start to see, oh my gosh, that was a silly reaction I had that was based on something that happened to me when I was 2 years old that, has no pertinence now. And so that's not even something I find interesting. It's kind of boring and it's not real for me. So why do I need to get upset because somebody else is upset? Right? I mean, you start looking at these things and they seem so silly, like antiquated, And I think as you get into the more transparent consciousness, you look at a lot of things that are going on in the world today as kind of like dinosaur behavior, like, like prehistoric ways of thinking. And how do they keep getting away with this? That there are that many people that agree with this way of thinking.
Yes.
But the balance of power is going over toward this clarity kind of consciousness. And pretty soon it will eclipse that old way. The old way of linear thinking is going to be so slow and just kind of dumb, just dumb.
Yeah. Well, it's becoming very clunky and redundant, and it doesn't make sense. Like, why does it take, all of these steps for change to happen? Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So,
right. Because it's right now, everything's in the present moment, more and more and more and more and more. So change can happen like that in the moment. If you do it, it's done.
So
now it may come back up, but then you do it again and it's gone. And the more times you recenter into the truth, the less your body believes the old reality is true.
Yeah.
And it's gone. I mean, you'll forget it and think it happened to someone else. It's like, was that mine? Did I have child abuse, or whatever it is?
Right. Because you just don't have a resonance with that anymore. Like there's nothing to attach. Yeah.
No.
Good. So as we have greater and greater transparency, how do you see that affecting the political, situation, both in, America and globally?
Yeah. I think, first of all, that what's happening now is a natural part of the transformation process where everything that used to be hidden in the subconscious mind and could be avoided, like the sexual abuse, for instance, can no longer be hidden. And it's all coming up
Hmm.
into the conscious mind, which is the current events and the news societally.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. But people are starting to feel that that kind of lack of transparency and hiding and lying, what causes these men to want to sleep with 14-year-old girls? There's something going on in there that they're ashamed of, that they don't want anyone to see.
Hmm.
And so they're using their cleverness and their power and all this stuff to kind of camouflage it. But now, when we're transparent, we see through the camouflage, right? And we see
Yes.
absolutely what's going on in that person, and they can't hide. And so same thing with narcissism in general.
Mm.
Victimization and narcissism are two sides of the same issue, which is a deep belief in vulnerability and fear. Like vulnerability is a bad thing. I have to be
Sure.
perfect and wonderful or else I'll be rejected. So
Hmm.
with narcissism, you have to control your reality and the way everybody else reacts to you so that they'll all think you're wonderful. And you can do that by coercion, by belittling people and making them agree with you, and by distraction and all those techniques we're seeing in politics right now. Or we're seeing the opposite thing, which is like this kind of victimization, like the opioid addiction crisis, where people are
Right.
just leaving their bodies and not dealing with things, or suicides,
Hmm.
you know. So there's an extreme reaction to trying to control the fear. So if you're transparent, you go in and you understand it, and then you clear it and you heal yourself. But so with politics, I think it's going to be a fairly rapid clearing process because it's come out
Yeah.
in such a strong way now, in an overpowering, almost ridiculously weird, crazy way, that people are finally seeing the behaviors.
Hmm.
So then we're going to have some very sane, more mature politicians who I think will rise, like maybe Tim Ryan or some of those kind of people who are, meditators and so forth, who will come into power and be, pleasantly and refreshingly ethical,
Hmm.
you know, and then I think, a lot of the covert behaviors, it just will be able to be seen.
Hmm.
So, and it may be
Yeah.
that there's also going to be a third party where we're not into polarization thinking anymore, but into multiple parties or multiple kinds of positions where we have a flatter, less hierarchical structure, you
Mm.
know, where everybody
Yes.
participates more equally, and probably
Hmm.
the electoral college go away, you know. So I
Wow.
think, yeah, a lot of changes will happen, and
Yes.
I don't see it as too far in the future.
No, no, and I think that the transparency is whether you go along with it and embrace it and welcome it, or whether you resist it, it's coming. And
Yes, exactly.
I think if
Yeah.
you want to avoid those uncomfortable feelings of the vulnerability, then it's you step in and embrace it, and then just
You can
breathe.
reframe the idea of vulnerability into the idea of sensitivity.
Mm.
When you're really vulnerable, you're allowing yourself to, first of all, be seen, but also to feel everything. You feel a lot when you're vulnerable. You feel people thinking about you. You feel subtle things, right? Almost intuitive
Yeah.
things. So the more vulnerable we are, I think the more conscious we can become. When you allow yourself to just be open and let things happen around you, you become very ultra sensitive.
Hmm.
And, and then, yeah, you're really, when you do that, then you become very interconnected with the world around you. And then when you do that, you start to feel loving about the world, right? Because you're connected to it.
Yes.
Things that you connect to, you have intuition about, and you have a sense of affection with generally, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it just all
Yeah,
works to snowball in the right direction.
it does. And as you're talking, it just like brings up so much like excitement and bliss inside. I can feel it because it's just like, oh, that would be like amazing.
I know
So,
it's kind of,
yes.
we all have, I think idealism and purity are interesting ideas because they have to do with our memory of the way spirit works, how things work in the spiritual realms, because there's no fear there. There's
Hmm.
instantaneous connection. You know, you have an idea, it can materialize right away in your mind. You know, it's all in the imaginal realm. And we're sort of like starting to get the idea that, of course, this physical world has the spiritual world inside of it. So why isn't it functioning according to spiritual principles?
Hmm.
It should be, because it's made of spirit. And so we're sort of like, yes, we want that to happen. You know, like we are going to make sure that the spiritual world, it comes out in the physical, and we get to equalize the worlds. You know, I think that's part of a lot of us. We just remember how fun it is
Hmm.
without the fear and
Yes. Oh,
how things actually work. And so why do we keep going into fear and um, reactivating it or reaffirming it, you
hmm.
know, by choosing to think negatively about someone or having a sort of default setting of pessimism? You know, we commiserate with others, right?
Yes.
Let's all be in misery together, you know, and then you know, share our surgeries, you
Yeah.
know.
See if we can one up each other.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Oh my goodness. Well, Penny, this has been like such, I mean, this is just like the little tip of the iceberg. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you guys that are watching and listening, I don't say this hardly ever, but this book that Penny has written, Transparency, I think everyone should read it. It's like, it's just, you got to read it because you have so many great practical, like you break things down,
Mm.
you tell people, tell us exactly how to do it. And oh my gosh, it's just it's an amazing book. I mean,
Thank you so
so
much for that.
yes, so thank
It sort
you.
of had its own mind, I'm going to tell you, as I was writing it.
And thank you for embracing that because that is why, it's such a, I'll say it's a brilliant book, because that's such a magical word. But yeah, so those that are watching, listening, I invite you, if this conversation has stimulated your excitement like it has for me, and we're going to continue this conversation for our Awaken Goddess Show members. We're going to deepen this conversation and do an experience to help us embody this and integrate it. So would love to have you join us as a member, and you can find out more at theawakenedgoddess.com. So thanks again, Penny, for joining me today. This
Yeah,
was a magical conversation, so thank
my
you.
pleasure. Totally.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I hope you enjoyed today's guest and got something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at theawakenedgoddess.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.